I've always said, why didn't the National Enquirer get the Pulitzer Prize for Edwards and O.J. Simpson and all of these things?
There's still time. They might get it for you. But that was Donald Trump saying the National Enquirer deserved a Pulitzer. And it's the owner of the Enquirer who made a non-prosecution agreement with the Southern District of New York and revealed that he paid off a Playboy model, quote, in concert with the candidate's presidential campaign. Our friend Jim Rutenberg of the New York Times looked at the impact the National Enquirer had beyond that hush money payment, writing, quote, it was the real-world embodiment of the fantasy online world of trolls, Russian and domestic, who polluted the political discourse. From its perches at Publix and Safeway, it was often doing the same job as Alex Jones of the conspiracy site InfoWars and the more strident Trump campaign surrogates on Twitter and Facebook. Jim continues, wondering what the Enquirer's covers were worth to the Trump campaign. I called Regis Marr, a co-founder of Do It Outdoors, a national mobile and digital billboard company. He said a campaign with that level of national prominence would cost $2.5 to $3 million a month. Jim Rutenberg's here right now. That's unbelievable. And could they be scrutinized for being an arm of the campaign? Could they be scrutinized? It seems like if they were directed by Trump, my understanding of campaign finance laws is that that's what you can't be prosecuted for favorable coverage, or a lot of outlets would be in trouble, but that if they were directed by the Trump campaign, they could have some exposure.
I mean, I actually think technically they're not, they aren't exposed on those covers because it's not a direct money value. I mean, I put a value on it.
Directing that?
Well, he may have been, but as I understand it, the law on coordination of coverage journalistically, because of the First Amendment, it gives a lot of leeway. Where it doesn't give leeway is a payment, right? The Karen McDougal thing was a payment. It was $150,000. But while we're at it, these things did have a value, and we can put a dollar amount on them. So
I mean, $3 million a month. They didn't spend $3 million a month, I doubt, on gas for the Trump airplane. I mean, that would be the largest campaign expenditure that I can think of, right?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't at that point. How much was he spending every month?
Nothing.
It was, everyone was just murmuring about it. Well, he doesn't have any ground game. He doesn't have staffers. I mean, in the end, we see where, that really didn't matter, the way that he ended up commanding the media cycle. But yes, I mean, this is the kind of coverage that if you're on a campaign, wouldn't you have loved for your opponent to have had,
On the National Enquirer?
I mean, he's right. Some of this stuff was so weird. The only alternative would be to find it on InfoWars, and they were splashing it in every grocery aisle on the cover of National Enquirer.
Look, the role of the National Enquirer, all this, they were the perfect foil to be involved in the Karen McDougal payment. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Donald Trump had the personal relationship with David Pecker. They had the business relationship. He was the confidant that Trump turned to say, hey, I need your involvement to hush this woman. And that is ultimately now, because Pecker turned and named that Donald Trump was in the room, why the President of the United States has been implicated in a federal felony.
So this is go ahead.
Well, just a couple points. First, you can make a contribution in kind. So it's really their First Amendment status rather than the fact that it was in kind that makes the problem. But there's a very interesting argument here that they really are not deserving of First Amendment protection.
Right.
They are not functioning as an actual objective news agency here, and particularly it's not simply because they were biased. Many papers are, but their coverage, the fountainhead of it all, is the Pecker-Trump relationship secret. To try to push the election in that way. The First Amendment doctrine is very strong, but it's arguable that it could be pierced here.
But we did report in the summer that prosecutors looked at that question, really thought about it. And clearly where they came down was it was more valuable to strike this agreement with AMI to continue, I assume, getting information out of them because their investigation continues.
Let me ask you, I mean, this is your beat. And I remember in the Fourth Estate, you sort of joked about this being part of your beat. Right. Talk about sort of the insidious nature, because I learned for the first time in your story and your reporting that the Enquirer was involved in helping him not just smear Hillary Clinton, but win the Republican primary. How deep and how far back did this relationship go? How did it work on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we now know that there was an agreement at least in August of 15, right? Prosecutors have confirmed that. You guys were talking about it last week, in which President Trump, then candidate Trump, Mr. Pecker, and Michael Cohen all coordinated kind of protective status for him. Now, remember, that's before the primaries kick in. Yeah. Interestingly, right ahead of the primary season, there were a lot of glowing profiles. There was a story how Vladimir Putin wants it. Source close to Trump reports Vladimir Putin wants him to win the presidency. So very interesting. But then we see what he did to Carson, what he did to ultimately Ted Cruz. And what I saw on the Ted Cruz coverage was this weird sort of bot activity around what he was doing. So this could have tentacles into another investigation. You know which one I'm thinking of, right?
The Mueller investigation.
Yes.
Explain to me the significance for Mr. Pecker and the National Enquirer and AMI of a non-prosecution agreement.
So they are, and please chime in, but they are now, they're in the clear.
They're on
right?
Team America, though. They're helping them with whatever they want to know.
They have helped them. So the question now is, will this go forward for more help? And what did they already tell them? But first of all, we knew that Mr. Pecker and his deputy Dylan Howard had agreements earlier, kind of more limited agreements. The company was still exposed. Now the company's out of hot water. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like now they're sitting there for 3 years at their disposal.
And all the contact. I mean, a Trump ally said to me that their relationship goes back years. It was social, it was professional, and it was political.
That's true. And it's interesting here because Pecker, I mean, I think they were under tremendous pressure, potential liability, and it was almost a forced play to do the non-cooperation agreement. But the report is Pecker was very angry with Trump around July for his not being more full-bodied in his defense of the Enquirer, and that once again, Trump's being the most disloyal of mob bosses has actually played to his disadvantage.
Wow, making Tony Soprano look like a sweetheart.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.